but the state of the Republican Party. That's our top story tonight here on the Chris Salcedo Show. Former President Donald J. Trump releasing a statement in response to 35 Republicans voting in favor of a January 6th commission. He wrote, quote, "We have much better policy and are much better for the country, but the Democrats stick together. Republicans don't." The former president is correct. In the midst of multiple border crises, after a year and a half of left-wing riots in our streets, after the wave of Democrat hate against whites and Jews, after fiscal policy that has sponsored runaway inflation, the GOP is divided. Some are eager to join with those socialists. Others simply want to attack President Trump. And yes, there are some who don't look at the conservative Republican platform as a suggestion, but they try to live up to it. Now, all this led to a question that I have. Is the GOP capable of opposing the Democrats' systemic socialism? That's the question we pose in tonight's preamble. Joining me now to have a frank and open discussion about this, New York Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis, Illinois Congresswoman Mary Miller, and Texas Congressman Michael Cloud. Guys, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. It is a pleasure to have all of you here. 35 Republicans joined socialists to focus on one riot, and in so doing, ignore a year and a half of riots that have plagued this country. Congresswoman Maliotakis, you go first. Why should not the American people conclude that the Republican Party is not capable of standing up against socialists?
Well, I would say that the Republican Party is very capable, but we need to refocus and understand that it is the Democrats, it is President Biden, it is his radical agenda, it is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the squad that are attempting to destroy this country. And proposals that are being put forth, like the bill that was voted on yesterday, are merely a distraction. And we cannot allow that to take precedent. We need to understand that in yesterday's vote, for example, there is already an investigation being conducted by the Department of Justice, by the FBI, by the Department of Homeland Security, that there are 2 bipartisan committees in the Senate that are looking into and will be coming forward with recommendations in a couple of weeks. To add a commission that was spearheaded by Nancy Pelosi is not helpful and will just add politics to it. So I believe that Republicans need to stay focused on what is really at stake here. It is our freedom. It is our liberty. It is the American dream. It is the opportunity that my parents came as immigrants to pursue in this country and that we want to preserve for future generations. And let's work together to expose the policies that are being put forth by the other side, present our alternatives that are much better, as President Trump said. And let's win those 5 seats next year so that we can once again restore the majority in Republican hands so we can have a balance in this country, which is incredibly needed to preserve everything we believe in as Americans.
Right. Yeah, Congresswoman Miller, I want to go to you next. Same general overarching theme here. Is the Republican Party capable of standing up to Democrat socialists? And I want to put it in this lens. Everybody condemns violent riots. Hell, I've spent the last year on this program condemning the violent riots that left-wingers have been visiting upon our fellow citizens. They've been looting, burning, killing. They've been beating in our streets for the last year and a half. And we condemned the day January 6th happened. We condemned the riot at the U.S. Capitol. But there are 35 Republicans who said, you know what? To heck with all of our constituents in all these cities who have suffered at the hands of left-wing extremists. We want to focus on one day. Again, I ask you the question, why shouldn't the American people conclude that Republicans are just not up to the task?
Well, I think that we have a new crop of Republicans who were elected under the Trump banner and were infused with energy, enthusiasm, and courage. And I do think that people are exposing themselves. And definitely the Democrats are overstepping. We're going to take back the House in 2022. But I think certain Republicans are revealing who they are. Now, as for me, one reason I'm running that I ran is that I've been irritated with Republicans who claim to stand for conservative values, the Constitution and the platform, but yet when they have the opportunities, they don't. And so regular people like me are irritated, and we have grassroots support at home, and we're gonna we're going to elect those Republicans out.
Congressman Cloud, I want to go to you next. Again, same overarching theme here, but we have been told by the basket of bias press and by the Socialist Democrats that when the commission of crime of unarmed black men confronted by police and they are shot, there was one example here recently of a young man who had a gun. He ditched the gun, and the next time the police officers saw him, he was throwing up his hands, and they didn't realize he had gotten rid of the gun, and they shot him. And we're told that that's wrong. However, Ashley Babbitt was crawling through a window inside the U.S. Capitol. Again, she was breaking the law, just like that young man was. And she was gunned down. She was unarmed. She was gunned down in the U.S. Capitol. And 35 Republicans joined with Socialist Democrats to say, you know what? It's perfectly okay to gun down an unarmed white woman when she's committing a crime. It's not okay to gun down an unarmed person of color when they're committing a crime in America. But 35 Republicans joined with socialists to say they're going to look the other way on Ashley Babbitt. Why shouldn't the American people conclude that Republicans just don't have what it takes to stand up to socialists?
We're seeing more and more Republicans stand up to what's going on. And I can tell you this, when it came to January 6th, every Republican stood up. You haven't had one Republican say that was okay, but we all said justice needed to be served. The problem is when we see justice unequally served, and that's what we're seeing here and why this week's vote was so important. We also had a vote on the security of the Capitol, and it's interesting that we see the Democrats so willing to secure the Capitol, but unwilling to secure the border. So when it comes to their own selves, when it comes to the symbols, they're really good at that. They're good at the symbols, but not really good at meeting the hearts and minds of American people and meeting the needs. We saw this even during the Trump administration when it came to African Americans and minorities. We saw tremendous job growth, wages going up, solving the real needs, beginning to take those first steps toward making progress. But instead, Democrats are focused on the symbols, the statues and such. So we offer real opportunity, real progress, as opposed to the progressivism. We offer real opportunity for real people, an economy that works for people who are willing to work.
Well, no, I understand. That's what it says on the sign of the door for the Republican Party. And as a conservative, I have been hearing that all of my life, saying, oh, if you're a conservative, the Republican Party is the place for you. And frankly, folks, I don't know anymore. Let me talk about something else. Democrats have the thinnest of margins, yet they've been able to impose incredibly wasteful spending through something called reconciliation. Yet when the Republican Party under the Trump administration, they had the House, they had the Senate, Paul Ryan was there, along with Mitch McConnell. They couldn't use the reconciliation to impose fiscal discipline. The Republican Party was unwilling to impose fiscal discipline using the same tools that Democrats are using to sponsor runaway inflation. Congresswoman Malliotakis, I mean, again, the Republicans time and time again have a legacy of failure when it comes to living up to their own platform. Am I wrong?
Well, in that particular measure in which they used reconciliation, you did not have one Republican vote. We stuck together and said that this was wrong, that they were changing the rules. They were essentially abusing their power in changing the vote in the Senate from 60 to 51 in order to pass that $1.9 trillion package. So in that case, the Republicans did stand solid and said we weren't going to support this and go along with this. What I will say is this. Look, I understand that the people are frustrated. I understand that you're frustrated, and I'm frustrated as well in many respects. But what we have to understand, and when I hear people say, well, we're going to vote out this member or that member because they don't side with Republicans all the time, what they need to understand is what's at jeopardy is that they may get a Democrat in that seat instead. We are 5 seats away from regaining the majority, and it is the slimmest minority the Democrats have had since World War II. We flipped 15 seats, including mine, Democrat to Republican. So what people need to understand is that if they don't come out and support our Republican candidates, that they're giving more of a majority to Nancy Pelosi so she can pass all sorts of radical policies. You may not agree with the Republicans once or twice, but at the end of the day, it's much better than having a radical liberal in that seat.
Well, Congresswoman Malliotakis, I'm going to expand on that in my next question to Congresswoman Miller. I mean, we have that now. The last time the Republican Party was in power, they didn't have the imagination or the guts that the Democrat Party has to use reconciliation to impose fiscal discipline on this country and work for the betterment of the country. The Democrats have the chutzpah. They have the guts to go ahead and ram through reconciliation harm to this country. And we're seeing runaway inflation right now. We have quadrupled the money supply in this country, and that's devaluing the U.S. dollar. And the Republicans may have come together to vote against it, but when they had the majority, Congresswoman Miller, they didn't do the right thing using the same tools. So at least am I saying that Republicans just lack the imagination the Democrats have?
Well, I do think President Trump has forever changed the Republican Party. He was the first president that I remember that fulfilled his campaign promises. He was so courageous. He took on issues that should have been dealt with for a long time. And he's very much still in the arena. And he is going, if he doesn't run, he will be the kingmaker. He is behind getting good candidates, Republican candidates that will stick to the party platform. And I always told my children, don't listen to what a politician says, look at what they do. And I think that we should continue to replace Republicans that don't stick with the party platform. And I'm a Christian conservative constitutionalist. I am for the Republican Party, but they need to stick to their platform. And so I guess I part with people just because they take the name of Republican. I want them to stick to the party platform and support the Constitution, because otherwise we're going to have more of this.
Right. I only got a few minutes left here. And Congressman, Congressman Cloud, I want to get you I want to get you to weigh in on this, because Americans have watched the lack of fiscal discipline ruin this country. We have mountains of unrepayable debt, and the Republican Party has stopped talking about fiscal discipline altogether. And you can understand why so many conservatives say, well, maybe my place isn't in this new Republican big spending, big government party. What say you?
I think we're on the way to a course correction. We're not where we need to be yet as a party, but we are definitely on the way. You know, you can look at all the polls and everything, but I'll tell you, when it came to losing the House last time, we lost it for one simple reason. It was we didn't do what we said we were going to do. But I think there's a new kind of Republican who's being elected, who stands the season that we are in as a country. You know, 50 years ago, we were in the difference between Republicans and Democrats. We all kind of wanted our communities and our families to get to the same place, just had a discussion about the role of government in getting there. Now we have completely opposing views as to what it means to be an American, what our history means, whether or not socialism is the way to go or opportunity is the way to go, whether or not people should be free or whether they should be controlled by a federal government. And so the consensus is growing.
Congressman, I hate to give you short shrift here, but I'm up against the clock here, but I think you just hit on a very important point that I want everybody to hear, that the Republican Party needs to wake up and understand the nature of the people who now they oppose, are supposed to oppose. They're socialists. They're not Americans. They don't behave as Americans. They don't value the same thing, American values that we value. And I want to say to each and every one of you, Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, Congresswoman Mary Miller, and Congressman Michael Cloud, you guys came here, you took the tough questions, and not one Democrat will ever do that. Guys, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.